Hang on. I
It's
need to thingy.
Hell. It's really slow.
Oh, dear.
And we are live. I know it's slow. I hate that it's so slow, but it's slower every time I try.
I don't think there's anyone there, though.
No, there's no one there yet, but it's good fun to have YouTube. Anyway, I noticed, by the way, that they've put commercials on my stuff now, which is funny because I wasn't eligible for it. But
yeah, well, they might not give you any money, but it doesn't mean they don't want to make money themselves.
Yeah, probably. Anyway, so we're going to talk about the reasoning behind our current system of economics, which I notice is a crap way of typing, but there you go. I'll fix that later. Because my good friend John the Bemused is like, maybe our current system isn't as sustainable. And we will start talking about that in a moment. But till that time, we're going to talk about the QWERTY keyboard. And hi there, Michael Keller. Yes, you are somebody.
Oops, sorry about the clacking.
The clickety-clack of the QWERTY keyboard.
QWERTY, not QWERTY, QWERTY.
Yeah, I still say QWERTY. It's a Q.
QWERTY, QWERTY, QWERTY.
QWERTY.
So,
maybe the pronunciation rules are different in the Netherlands.
They are.
Yeah, but they have a different keyboard too, I suspect.
No. We use QWERTY as well.
Yeah, well, you don't.
Germany has a different system, I think.
You see, you do have a different keyboard. You have a QWERTY and we have a QWERTY.
Up yours.
Up your QWERTY.
Well, Germany has a different system. I can't remember the name of the German one.
Well, it's supposed to be, optimized for the preferences of each language, because obviously it's all about the prevalence of letters, and different languages have different letters.
Yeah. We use QWERTY, and Germans use QWORD. The QWERTY
I think they're all rather poorly laid out.
Well, yeah, because they were, as you say, optimized for a manual system where arms went up and you didn't want them to jam. The problem being, the problem being is, as I said, I was taught to touch type, and it's all about muscle memory, and it's not merely learning a new system. You have to unlearn the current system, so that's twice as hard. And if you've got a huge pool of people with the skills, none of them are going to go for it. They're going to go, no, I'll just stick with that one, thank you.
Yeah, America has a similar problem with switching over to metric. Every generation says, oh, the next generation is going to switch over to metric, and it never happens. They always push it forward to the next one.
Well, we've been half and half since the beginning of the 1970s.
Yeah.
So, for instance, if I buy milk, it's 4 pints. But if I buy orange juice, it's 2 liters, which is slightly smaller amount. But
I suppose you could say we're on metric probation.
Yeah. But speaking of Americans, I've got a keyboard for my iPad. And they've put all the bloody symbols in the wrong place. So every time I type @ I don't get in that. And every time I type hash, I have to go into convulsions because I can't just press the shift key. I have to press a special key, which is purposefully designed to not be compatible with pressing the hash key at the same time. And it's like, for goodness sake, I know where the hash is. I know where the @ is on my British keyboard. Apple are selling me a keyboard for a silly amount of money. Why can't they use the British layout?
It's Apple.
No.
I guess that says it all, though, doesn't it?
It does. But it's really annoying when you switch from one keyboard to the other, and you like go, oh, which bloody keyboard is this? Just for 2 or 3 characters.
And the old Michael Keller says you should know the ancient universal ASCII codes.
Ancient universal help of ASCII code. What use is the ASCII code when you want to type a character in an application?
It depends, though. I mean, I can remember back in the day when I think what was the first word program I used?
Yeah, back in the day. We're talking now. I never wrote ancient.
Well, it's universal, ancient, tomato, tomato. Because I said ancient.
He's foreign, Michael. I mean, I know you are, but he's foreign. It's not his first language. Give him some slack.
He's foreign. Says the Islander.
We might be the Islander, but it's our bloody language you're all speaking. So,
well, there is that. So today we wanted to talk about the how do you call it? The intricacies of the modern.
Well, it's attitudes to things like growth and.
But funny enough, the keyboards talk we're now having, it's kind of the same thing. Because if we look at it, they started using the QWERTY and the QWERTZ and all those different keyboard layouts to prevent typewriters from being crashing all the time.
Mm. Well, for them jamming, the physical mechanism.
Yeah, indeed. But we've moved on beyond that. So it no longer is a viable reason. But we're not changing.
No. In fact, I read a very interesting little tale about railway gauges.
Hmm.
That gauge is the width of the track.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, it's the width of the axle on a Roman ox cart.
Okay.
And the whole point was that everything got carried over in exactly the same manner from Rome, and everything carried over, and no one changed the width. And Isambard Kingdom Brunel, in his line to, because they were all built as individually, built his line from Paddington in London to Bristol on a wide gauge, and it was much more comfortable. But his was the only railway line that used the wide gauge, and everyone else just said, no, we're going to stick with the same as everybody else because it's much more cheaper to get rolling stock if it's all compatible. And
yeah, which you can then wonder. You can then wonder whether this is indeed better. But the thing is, and I think John has pointed out this in the past several times as well. Sometimes people start using something because for whatever reason it has become the standard, and people tend to not step away from the standard.
Well, yeah, I mean, in social media, or even I remember, I'm old enough to remember the Office Wars on computer office suites. And at the time they first started, you had Lotus, which was owned by IBM, and you had Microsoft. And Microsoft was still relatively the upstart of the two at that point.
Yeah, and WordPress was really good.
But because it was Windows, people were like, yeah, this has got these advantages. Yeah, that's got those advantages. Otherwise, they're pretty similar. I'll go with the one made by the people who make the operating system. And so there was a swing on the side of Microsoft, but then enough people, that swing just became large enough that it became self-perpetuating. Because in order to communicate with your business customers or suppliers, you wanted to be on the same system.
But I mean, in all fairness, Word did have an advantage over WordPerfect, though.
No, I'm not about WordPerfect. It was called AMI Plus, was the Lotus word
Yeah.
processor. And the spreadsheet was 123 by Lotus, which was decided to be much better than Lotus Excel, Microsoft Excel.
Yeah, but Microsoft Excel is crap.
Yeah, that's what I said. So it wasn't quality alone which determined who won. Is my point. The point is there was just enough vacillation that the pendulum swung to Microsoft, and then once it swung, it just gathered pace because everyone was like, "Oh well, we got to be on Microsoft because everyone we communicate with is on Microsoft."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, so and then all the social media giants are exactly the same. Why are people on Twitter? Because everyone else is on Twitter. Why are people on Facebook? Because everyone else is on Facebook. Instagram, blah 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 blah. All these platforms I don't know anything about.
Mm-hmm.
But the point being is that people join up to them simply because they're already used by people they know. That's the purpose of them.
Yeah.
And then they become de facto monopolies.
And then they demand that people keep using their products, even though their products are crap. To me, it's amazing that not more people are using, for example, Apache OpenOffice or Libre OpenOffice. Libre called different than OpenOffice, by the way. I can't remember the right name. Sorry. Both of them are infinitely better than Word. I mean, I'm not LibreOffice. Sorry, not OpenOffice. LibreOffice. Apache OpenOffice and LibreOffice. I can only advise people to get Apache OpenOffice. I mean, their Excel simulacrum is better. Their Word is better.
The problem is, and I'll tell you why I didn't. I want to be able to switch between my iPad and my PC, and Office seems to be the only platform that have got that properly sorted out.
Don't you like the MS ribbons that bring you directly into the cloud? No, I don't.
I've never put anything in the cloud.
I'm not a cloud fan, to be honest.
I'm a cloud anti-fan.
I mean, the thing is, people always like to say, well, when you put it into the cloud, let's say everything you put anywhere but your computer can be abused and is open to the public in ways that you did not expect.
Well, the only way you should put anything into the cloud is if you've encrypted it.
No,
no, if you encrypt it, they can't read it.
Encryptions can be broken.
Yes, encryptions can be broken, but they're not going to be broken for the effort of some random file. It's a non-trivial.
But I'm important, so yeah. Anyway, I'll be right back because I need a fast bio break. Nick.
No, exactly, Nick. Yeah.
Welcome, by the way. Store your personal information in a computer that you'll never see.
Well, I mean, what's more worrying is the way that Microsoft and Apple and all those push their free cloud servicing, and it's like, yeah, so what are you getting out of it?
Well, no, the thing is, if something is free, you are not using the product, you are the product.
That's what I'm saying. I know, but what I'm saying is like that, and they push it so hard.
Yeah, I'll be right back though. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go away. Sorry.
All right, maybe slightly different topic while he's away. Maybe you can help me with something that I've been thinking about lately.
Okay.
What are your opinions on consciousness, and what is consciousness, and how does the brain create it, in your opinion?
Right. Okay. So I take the because I've heard people say, "Oh, we don't know what consciousness is." Okay, but here's the thing: when you look at the whole animal kingdom, it actually exists in a gradient.
Yeah, so, I think I agree with that. It depends on things like EQ, correct?
Well,
brain
don't
rate
get me started on EQ.
brain rate to body rate ratio plays a big role.
No, but the point is this: is that people look at human consciousness, right? Which is, if you like, have jumped over the edge of something. But then a lot of animals are just the other side of the edge. Things like, gorillas or chimps that can have 100-word vocabulary or something, apparently. Or the way...
I've heard of chimps that can learn up to 2,500 words.
Okay, well, that's even more, but I didn't want to, And you've got apparently a chimp will know to, if they do something, to blame someone else. Okay, so these are a form of consciousness. They just aren't articulated in language.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
they seem to be mentally retarded to a mild degree.
Yeah, that may be, but the point is people look at the human consciousness and see it as an isolated thing and say, we don't know what this is. But if you start to look at it back in terms of just a super mutated version of this lesser consciousness, and that is an enhanced version of an even simpler consciousness, that gives you an idea of where it comes from, because at the end of the day, everything's evolved. So if we want to know what something is, we need to understand what is evolving, what is its role, and why it's important.
Well, to the best of my knowledge, chimps will hunt in bands, use tools, and exchange with one another.
Mm-hmm.
How do you determine higher levels of consciousness? Exchange seems to be something that should be a prerequisite to be considered an intelligent animal. Would you agree with that?
Well, I don't particularly care about things like intelligence. It's more like what is different about us is language and abstract thought.
Yeah, but even with humans, it took a very long time to get there. And what we're seeing now is that certain apes, and you've got apes and you've got monkeys, but they are basically developing roughly along the same lines as the hominid used to do. Mm-hmm. Now, they're nowhere near us, don't get me wrong, but they are close to our ancestors. Well, our ancient ancestors.
What do we have any idea what facilitated the fast growth of the Australopithecines and the rather slow growth of the chimpanzees and gorillas?
No, not that I know of. But this is something.
Two things, and there are two things, and no one is quite sure of the order for importance. Standing upright, which totally frees the hands, and the opposable thumb.
It's also a very good posture for running long distances.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is but these are viewed as key developmental differentiators, because once you can stand upright and have free hands, and you've got opposable thumbs, you're suddenly free to do a whole bunch more things in a whole bunch of new ways.
But this doesn't explain how our brain capacity grew.
Well, I don't know. I've only heard it discussed in passing, and not discussed as any answers, but as a question. That these were the key factors that made it possible.
Mm-hmm.
But you see, the thing is, when you look at evolution, there's like the co-evolution of species, for instance, between a predator and a prey, but they always hit limits. Our limit for our brain was the female pelvis, and even then it required the birth of essentially premature babies. Our babies are born prematurely compared to the fetal development of most, or if not all, mammals.
Mm-hmm.
Because that way the skull is still soft and can get through the pelvis. Okay.
Yeah.
And that is a limiting factor. And so what seems to have happened is there was a race to develop the brain, but there's always a limiting factor. Just as with other animals, they can't run that, there's a limit at which they can run, or a limit to their size, or whatever it is that gives them an advantage. So the question for the growth of the brain is, there will have been something, an evolutionary stimulus that meant that being smarter was an advantage. And once that starts, it will always be better to be even smarter, to the limit where it no longer is an adequate advantage to pay for the cost. Sorry, I'm not putting this very clearly, but yeah, because you will adapt and improve to the extent at which the improvement provides a genuine advantage, because that's what will create the breeding advantage to spread those genes that give that particular advantage.
Well, that's possible.
No, that's how evolution works. It's like even a little advantage in a large population, it will spread over time.
Mm-hmm. And there is this whole RK selection thing, and I always mix the two. But one is where offspring are fast to fend for themselves, and the other one is where offspring needs to be protected and cuddled for a long time.
Yeah, but the problem with humans is where do we fit on that? Because
we do fit on the taking care of children for a long time part. And I always forget which one is the what, the R or the K one. But it is one of the two ways evolution deals with procreation, so to speak. Some animals, they drop their children, and within weeks they have
yeah. Well, this is what I'm saying about our babies are born prematurely, because compared to almost all other mammals, cats are born blind, but they quickly gain the sight, and then they are bouncing around and free to run away by their own means very quickly.
Yeah. But humans, whether they're born prematurely or not, they're born with a soft skull because it makes birth
easier or possible.
Yeah, possible. But even after birth, children are at least 10 years dependable on their parents on average. And in modern times, we even say 18 years. But
yeah, but I think we can look at the evolutionary.
Ludicrous Leprechaun gave me an idea that I think might be interesting. Cro-Magnons, modern Homo sapiens, have typically far more meat in their diets than do modern chimpanzees and gorillas.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that to my knowledge, gorillas are completely vegetarian, and chimpanzees have about 5 to 15% meat in their diet? We sometimes have upwards of 30 to 50%. Do you think that has something to do with an increase?
Well, cooking was a critical
cooking,
factor, because it makes food more digestible.
Cooking, omnivorous diets, the rise of food production. Do you think that this has something to do with our increase in brain size?
Well, no.
Yeah,
The food production came later.
Yeah, but
the brain size came before that.
The food production and the cooking are both irrelevant.
All right,
let me finish. The food production makes larger societies possible. The cooking makes digestion easier. But the primary thing that most likely would have expedited our development is the eating of animal fats. Because our thinky organ, our brain, is completely fueled by fats. So you can eat all the vegetables you want, but your brain needs fat.
What about things like nuts?
It's a fat, sure enough, but there is more fat in an animal than there is in most of the vegetables. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it's highly impossible.
Sorry, I'm only saying that because every vegetarian, whenever you say that you need meat in your diet, every vegetarian will look at you and say nuts.
Yep, they are. I know. I agree.
Yeah, I was wondering when you were saying that, Modwain, about some snidey remark about vegans.
The thing is, nuts are good. They are a nice replacement, but they're not really a replacement. They're not good enough.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, this is what
They're good. They're pretty good for stunning enemies in Zelda. They're pretty underappreciated.
I mean, at the end of the day, this is what annoys me, because the science is in. We know we're omnivores, and yet there are people who insist we can be vegetarians. And the point is, why would you?
There are vegetarians who will insist that their cats and dogs are vegetarians.
Yeah, and they're frigging sadistic morons, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I thought dogs were typically. I thought they typically ate garbage and discarded vegetables.
Dogs are omnivores. They can eat certain vegetables, but just like humans, they need fats. They need animal products. Whether we like it or not, it's built in our system.
Right. What do wolves typically eat in the wild?
Meat.
Animals.
What animals do they typically hunt?
Moose.
Anything.
Elk.
Or deer, or things like that.
Okay. No. For example, we know that there are wolves high up in mountainous areas where they actually survive off of mice.
So theoretically, you could get your dog to love you a whole bunch by feeding him venison.
Oh yeah.
Might appeal to
get me to
might appeal to something.
It
might appeal to something very primal.
Venison sausages are lovely.
This is also why the better dog foods are high on meat. And the cheaper ones are usually low on meat. They bring lots of tomatoes, for example. They won't call it tomatoes, but they've got bread-like and tomato-like stuff in their kibble and all that.
I have to say, because I don't have pets, right? But I was up at my sister's, and she's got 2 dogs, and the dog food had meat and animal derivatives, and I thought, I do not want to know what an animal derivative is.
Yeah. And Nick Radio made a very good point. A dog's loyalty and a dog's love are not quite the same thing. Which is true.
I would consider chicken nuggets to be an animal derivative.
Only if there's chicken in them.
Yeah.
Yeah, there typically is.
Funnily enough, there's it is
believed by experts that chicken nuggets may be meat.
No. Okay. There's an infamous incident about chicken nuggets in British popular cultural folklore.
Call them chicken.
There was a celebrity chef called Jamie Oliver, and he got into this massive row over shaming parents for feeding chicken nuggets, mostly because of what's actually in them.
Well, go on then.
No, I mean, it was just, this big furore all around chicken nuggets.
Let's assume that these people don't know the whole story. Go on.
No, that's the whole story. It's just...
But it's true. People don't seem to know what's in chicken nuggets.
Well, but people don't know what's in processed meat. That's the point, because processed meat is meat and animal derivatives.
Nobody knows. Nobody can define the word process in processed meat.
Exactly.
Well, back in the days, processed meat was meat that were grinded and certain herbs were added to it, and then it was dried. Somehow, it's no longer the case.
These days, you call that jerky.
Well, indeed. I mean, the idea of processed meat is very old. I mean, the Romans had processed meats.
Well, yeah, I mean, people used to have to prepare meats for storage because they didn't have refrigerators or deep freezers.
So you never know. Hey, but we did have a topic about the.
We did. I wanted to show some pictures of Stadia.
So I'm going to give the floor to John, where he then can piss and moan about the inequalities of our current economic.
No inequality. What's inequality got to do with it?
Well, it is a way of inequality. Let's be honest.
Romans didn't have.
We are inferior in dramatic quality to our ancestors.
Well, maybe.
Romans didn't have deep freezers, correct, but they did have coolers.
Yeah, they had their own way. Like, for instance, the plague of the firstborn son was considered to have been because they had a habit of burying the wheat in pits in the ground, and it was the duty of the firstborn son to open it. But in the anaerobic environment, there was deadly bacteria that developed, or fungus, and only got breathed in by the person who opened it, which was the firstborn son. And that's an explanation for why they all died.
Well, that's one of the
explanations. Fucking horrible, and it was just a problem caused by improper storage techniques.
Well, no. Do you know the curse of Tutankhamun?
Yeah, a little bit.
There was a curse of Tutankhamun, and the guy who opened it, Carter, he also died because they'd had these all these foodstuffs were sealed in the tomb, and the people who were present when they unsealed the tomb all breathed in this.
He died from breathing in 3,000-year-old mold.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah. And it wasn't just him, but there was the people who were there at the opening of the tomb died. Yeah. And it was probably this same affliction.
And people didn't know why they died because our knowledge about health was dreadful at the time. Which
mildly.
You found this fantastic
there was profound
caution isn't there, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, let's chip our way into it. You don't think, oh, let's get some gas masks and make sure we're not killed by...
It was worse. They knew worse than nothing. There was profound misinformation about the human body.
That's the worst part of it all. They knew about the dangers of molds. There's a reason why in the Old Testament and in the Torah, the Jewish Bible, there is explicitly spoken about how to deal with foods, for example, and how to deal with
shellfish.
Fair enough. But the Hebrew Bible was written a good several hundred years after the death of Tutankhamun.
Oh no! But the death of Tutankhamun wasn't the point. The point was opening the tomb 3,000 years later.
That's the point. And by that time, people knew that molds were deadly. But they might have forgotten, or they didn't think about it.
Well, and if you're an archaeologist finding the find of perhaps all time in this tomb, right? You might be a little excited and forget to be careful about what you're breathing.
Yeah, probably. But I mean, you must notice it when you open it, the staleness of the air and all that.
Oh yes. But then it's too late.
There must be something very biological that tells you that you need to get out of there.
Well, no, it was more the because if you can imagine, they'd be in the tunnel, and then they would probably chip their way through, and the air would come out, and that's when they breathe it in. Because it would dissipate very quickly. Anyway.
That's such an unfortunate way to die.
It is.
Well, I don't know if there are any good ways to die, to be honest.
So I'm going to share my screen.
You know, interestingly, that's actually a really good fuck you to any tomb robbers who come by.
Well, there are people who claim that
it may have happened a few times where tomb robbers opened the tomb and then subsequently died from mold poisoning.
Yeah.
More than a few times. So there are people who are actually, because this is where the curse story came from.
Yeah.
And because the Tutankhamun one wasn't the first one.
Yeah, so it'd be the curse of the tomb.
Mm-hmm. Death by snoo snoo. Right.
I can't read the chat at the moment. I've hidden it.
I can. Ludicrous leprechaun, death by snoo snoo.
Snoo snoo. Okay, I don't know what a snoo snoo is, but I'm sure it's important.
It's an inside joke from Futurama.
Okay. I'm too old. All these things
So basically,
after my time.
Death or fucked to death. Take your pick.
Okay, so let's just give the little spiel. It's not a well-rehearsed one. Is it maximized on the share? No, it's not. Can you maximize my screen thingy?
You are maximized. There's not much more I can do on this one.
Okay, so the picture is my telly. It's the amphitheater in Verona on Sunday for the finale of the Giro d'Italia. The point being that it was built in 30 AD, finished in 30 AD. And yes, it had a period of disuse, but essentially you have a 2,000-year-old building still in use. And it got me thinking about a comparison with the way we do things today. Would we build a stadium that was still fit for use after 2,000 years? And I thought about a certain Wembley Stadium. This is the original Wembley Stadium, built, finished in 1923. This is from the first FA Cup final. I did that one because of the lovely picture of the fields. And this was it after they'd upgraded it towards the end of its life. That one, and that's it as they are actually digging it up to demolish it. That's the old Wembley Stadium, and this is a new Wembley Stadium. They built in 2007, so that is 84 years later. Not 2000, 84 years, they were already opening a replacement. Very fine and fancy, but will it last 2,000 years? Very unlikely is the point.
Well, the thing is, if we look at, for example, the stadiums built by the Romans, they weren't high on maintenance. They could survive quite a long bit without a lot of maintenance.
Yeah, trust me, the old Wembley Stadium was basic as anything.
Yeah, but the modern stadiums need a lot of maintenance. They need to be repainted a lot, for example. Otherwise, the metal stuff will absolutely erode away from under it. Which is the point John was trying to make, which was going to be the topic of our story.
Well, I mean, the point was, this was just an example. It was just a thought, which led me to the whole. We have a culture now which is predicated on economic growth. You know, we must grow the economy, and where if you say, for example, talk about the supply of oil or coal, and people say, don't worry, we've got enough for another 200 years, as if in any sense at all that's a long time, because it's not. And I was wondering, 500 years in the future, what would they say about us? God, they were so short-sighted. They had no care for the future. They just burned through these things, literally in the case of fossil fuels, in no time at all, without any thought. And so that was my thought. It's like, you know, is it a good way to be? So consume, you know, build, predicated on growth. What we're growing, you know, how much shit do we all have we don't need, don't want? You know?
The thing is, we are indeed, but this is the whole point of a consumer economy or a consumer market. We are way too much consumer based, whereas the concept of building to last has somehow lost its merit, and that there is something seriously wrong in that. But I'm not. I mean, don't get me wrong. Where it comes to, for example, certain things we should build to last. I think a house should be built to last. I think it's ludicrous that we build houses. I mean, I've seen apartment flats rise in this city and being replaced, so being destroyed and built again. I'm not that old.
Yeah. Well, there were all these 60s tower blocks in places like Sheffield, where I come from, and and they stopped being usable after like 20, 30 years.
Yeah. Well, this is East Bloc build style, so to speak. We had them in the Netherlands as well, and it's beyond stupidity. So in that case, I agree with John that we are in a, how do you call it, a culture that likes to consume, but doesn't like to preserve. Where I disagree with John is I don't think that the whole fossil fuel thing is nearly the same problem as a lot of people are making it out to be.
Well, it's not the problem directly, it's the mindset.
You fear the fear of other people?
Fear the fear of other people? No.
Do you fear paranoia about fossil fuels?
No, I'm talking about if people we look at a 2,000-year-old building, and then we'll say, oh, don't worry about coal, we've got enough for 200, 300 years. So if we're looking at a 2,000-year-old building, 200-300 years is no time at all. That's my point. That's my point. My point is the attitude that we're okay now. We don't have to worry about a few generations in the future. And my point is we should be more concerned about further into the future. We should be trying to say, considering how much of this use of fossil fuels is for shit, shoddy plastic goods no one wants, or shoddy clothes no one wants, or
yeah, we don't build to last.
It's not just we don't build to last, it's we build stuff to be bought to then throw it away almost before you've used it, which is insane. It is such a bizarre mentality. It's historically an aberration. No one in the past would ever have bought anything in such a short-minded way. The whole concept of smartphones, and you replace your iPhone every 2 years. It's like, for goodness sake, there's nothing wrong with the technology that can't make it last for much longer than that, but it's built in that it has to be so quick.
No, I agree with you on that one. Though I disagree with some of the premises of what you're saying. And indeed,
well, don't talk about my premises, because you don't know my premises. But,
well, the throwaway mentality when it comes to fossil fuels.
Not throwaway, it's short-sightedness.
Yeah, I understand why you say that, but I don't really agree. Because in all fairness, of each and every form of fossil fuel that we currently are using, we already have replacements. We don't use the replacements, but
my point is not fossil fuels, Modwain. My point is not fossil fuels. My point is the attitude to fossil fuels. As an example of our short-termism.
I can understand that. But as I said, I mean, the thing is with developments, there are several How can you say? There are several tracks. Now, for example, if you're going to build something to last, like a railway station or buildings, housing, arenas, all those sorts of things, then you create something of value, and that value continues. For example, if we take Wembley Station, they built something of value, and that value was taken out of the equation by building a new station, a new station. No, not station. How do you call it?
Stadium.
Stadium. Thank you. Couldn't find the word. Stupid me. Getting old and all that. So basically, by building a new stadium, we are destroying value. So there is a problem where we have an economic system where it's okay to destroy value. And to me, I agree with you that that's a huge problem. Now, in some cases, one could say there are already replacements for certain systems. That's not true, not systems. For example, we know how to make plastic without using oil. We know how to replace oil. We know how to replace coal. Yet we're still using oil and coal because it's convenient. Now, don't get me wrong. Where I am in favor of renewable fuel sources and all that, I don't think what a lot of people are doing now, putting all their money in solar panels and wind turbines and all that, I don't think that's a viable idea at all. But at the same time, I do agree that we need to recognize that we need to step away from fossil fuels.
Okay, sorry. Okay. My whole point was that we have a society predicated on economic growth.
Yeah.
You cannot, at some point, there is a limit to growth. It might be a long, long way away, and you might keep pushing it off, but eventually there is a point at which one cannot grow.
Yeah,
and the mentality of predicating our whole economies on growth, when much of the growth is in things we neither want nor need, and activities that provide no genuine value, the question is this a good idea? And
yeah.
My point is to say, not to say, oh no, it's bad, but to say, well, that's worth thinking about.
No, I agree with you. If we grow too much in a way that encourages, how do I say this? It encourages people to be less than frugal. Let's call it that for the time being. Yeah, we encourage people to not care too much about their choices, their society, their productions. So is that a good idea? No, it's not. But is there a limit to growth? This is difficult to answer because yes, there is, but at the same time, growth is like a multi-pronged highway. Or rather, it's not so much a multi-pronged highway. It's like you start with road 1, and then halfway through you start building a second road next to it.
Yeah, but here's the problem, Modwain. We don't live, thank God, in a planned economy.
True.
And your example only works in a planned economy.
No. I'm not saying you actually physically build. No. This is.
No, I didn't say physically build.
No,
the point is.
Let me explain, John, because I think you really misunderstand what I'm saying. The point I'm trying to make is that, for example, if we look at fossil fuels, we've already seen a lot of developments away from fossil fuels. They're still using the same technologies in a way, but they're no longer fossil fuels. We found ways to create our own replacements of fossil fuels. We're nowhere near the end of the possibilities there. We haven't even started looking at the surface of that. But at the same time, we're not using it now because people are lazy and they can say, okay, we have enough oil and coal and whatnot. So I agree with you when you say they're lazy. Where I disagree is where I don't think it's the end of economical evolution. I think at a certain point in time, the step will be made to step over to a more frugal.
This. We buy stuff. We're encouraged to buy stuff.
Yeah.
And much of what we buy is
to throw away.
Unnecessary.
Yeah.
It's disposable, even things that needn't be so disposable. The point is a conceptual one, that having, I mean, for instance, the shirt I'm wearing was bought 20 years ago. Just a t-shirt, but I bought it 20 years ago. It's a good quality one.
Yeah.
Shame to say it's American, but anyway. Whereas you could easily go to a store and buy a cotton t-shirt. Yeah, it'd be cheap as anything, and it'll last a year if you're lucky.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I have, I think, 3 or 4 shirts that are more than 20 years old, and they weren't expensive either. That's the fun part.
Yeah.
They weren't, but they're quality.
But my point is, you know, and people want to, you know, there's a drug effect to purchase. You know, you know, it's like it's similar to the social media buzz, endorphins. When people go and spend money to get the endorphins. But the point is that's not I don't believe that's a positive way to live. There's also an endorphin effect by not needing to buy something, by fixing something that's just a little raggedy, or, you know, they used to darn socks.
Yeah. No, most people don't even know how to do that anymore.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how to do that, but they used to darn socks. You know what I mean? It's like there's a fundamental shift in attitude where the slightest fault, you just throw it away and buy a new one.
Yeah.
And that, okay, even if that's okay, what about all the stuff you then go and buy at the same time that you never use or don't value, or you've got so many of them you could have done with half as many, or those parts of things? And if you subtract all that spending from the economy would be a lot smaller, and it wouldn't have grown. It would have in fact contracted.
I'm not really sure about that. Could be, I don't know.
Well, you know, I mean, the economy is based on, like in Britain, it's always, oh, the shops aren't seeing so much spending, and that's always bad news for the economy, right? But the point is what are people buying?
Yeah, because if you look at economy on spending, then yeah, that's a simplistic way of looking at it. There's way more to it than that. There's way more to it than that.
Oh, I'm sure there are many ways, but you with me? It's like that the whole retail environment is part of the economy.
Yeah, it's part of it, definitely. Yeah.
And
we do have a throwaway society where you can ask yourself, how is that useful? Because basically what we're doing is we're destroying value.
Yeah.
Yeah. On this, I'm on board with you. Now, the question becomes, if our throwaway society is creating more value than it throws away.
Well, I'm not. First, I don't know how you would measure that. Secondly, I don't care, because
it's difficult.
Our politicians push economic growth as a mantra, as an axiom.
Yeah, but these are the same people who will tell you that diversity is our strength.
Yeah, maybe, but they've been pushing economic growth for a lot longer than diversity is our strength. The question is it inherently either necessary or a good idea?
Well, there is something to be said for economic welfare, not economic welfare, sorry, wrong word. But economic strength is useful.
Yeah, but here's the thing, right? If you've got your population, and that population was, let's just say, a little more savvy on what they bought.
Yeah.
So there's things people buy, they don't buy as much, so the economy's not large, there's not as much spending, blah, blah, blah. But they have their material needs met more successfully. Is that a bad thing if GDP has shrunk?
No, definitely not. And the funny thing is, and I just thought of it now, but I can remember back in the days when I was still going to school and all that, they were talking about the aristocracy in most countries, in the Netherlands, Germany, Belgium, in England. They found that the aristocracy, where they might buy more expensive, they didn't buy more opulent. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So they bought for the long term.
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't always on trend.
Yeah.
They weren't susceptible to the fashion trends. Being classic is always in fashion, something like that. But because they did that, they might have bought materials that were slightly more expensive, but they saved a lot of money because they didn't replace most of these materials.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, you could say, well, it's bad for the general economics, but in reality, that's not true. The money they spent on user goods was less than the money they spent on different things, but the different things they spent the money on were still better for them and the people directly around them.
Mm-hmm.
So when people say it's good to be in an it's good to be in an expanding economy where people buy where people buy a lot of stuff, that's not really true. I mean, yes, it's nice to have an economy with a high turnover, but it's not necessary to have a strong economy.
Yes, and then my point is that
it's necessary to have a society in which everyone can trade for what they need and want.
Yes, that's the sort of my point. But that's not the society we live in.
No, we live in a throwaway society at the moment. I agree.
No, we live in one which is predicated that growth is good.
No. I really want to say a throwaway society, because the idea that growth is good in itself isn't bad, but the growing of an economy doesn't mean anything. Because when people say, well, the economy is growing, okay, how? What grew? Well, people spend more money. Yeah, fair enough, but money is worth less. So how did it effectively grow? We're just renaming things. That's not growth. Yeah, but now people have a GDP of 2,000, where 100 years ago they only had a GDP of 100. Yeah, but money was way more valuable back then as well. So it's basically the same. Well, there's a slight growth, because there is a slight growth, but the idea that there's a huge growth is bullshit. And in all fairness, people who are talking about how they want to see the economies grow are usually people who are highly invested in the growth of inflation, which, funny enough, is terrible for everyone who isn't rich, because inflation is what keeps poor people poor.
Well, poor people are poor whether there's an inflation or not.
True, but
no, I mean the UK. Okay, because this is really annoyed me. Okay, so I was born. Well, I lived. I can't say born. Okay, in this mid to late 70s and in the 80s, all the way into the 90s, the UK had really high inflation, at least 10%, sometimes 15, 20%.
Mm-hmm.
And Margaret Thatcher was banging on and on and on. Her number one target was inflation. And do you know what she did about it? Fuck all. Nothing. It never dipped during her premiership.
Which is
weird. No, do you know who brought it under control? Bloody John Major, after she'd left. Okay. All that time. Inflation's the enemy. Inflation's the enemy. And then she did nothing about it. And they often did. A massive tax cut is really inflationary, because it's releasing a lot of money into the economy, and it was no different in effect to the wage inflation which had beset the country for decades. So then we have an era starting in the mid-1990s of low inflation, and the Labour government that came in 97 under Tony Blair, one of its acts that got it elected was to say, we will stick to the spending plans of the Conservatives. And for a long time, they kept inflation at less than 2%, very low.
Yeah.
And do you know what happened after they'd had inflation at low percentage? Everyone fucking moaned about how low inflation, because interest rates are below inflation, that's the interest rate set by the Bank of England, doesn't encourage investment, and how terrible low interest rates are. So hang on, we've had decades of high inflation and everyone tells you how terrible that is, and then you have decades of low inflation and everyone tells you how bad that is. Only proves no one's bloody happy.
Well, but in all fairness, the people who are talking about how high inflation is bad are economists that kind of want to see how certain status quos are being breached. The people who are talking about how low inflation are bad are the ones that try to make it easier for money lenders to make money.
Yeah, but my point is this, is that
money
neither was a good thing. This is my point. Neither was a good thing.
That's not the thing. People will tell you it's not a good thing. But the ones telling you that low inflation is not a good thing are the people that make money off of lending money. And lending money is the worst way to keep an economy growing. Neither a borrower nor lender be. There's a reason that came to be.
Yeah, money, because usury was a crime under Christianity at the time.
Well, but the thing is, money lending is the death knell. Most people in financial problems nowadays are in financial problems because of loaning money.
Yeah, but there is no, for many people, there is no correlation between the rate of inflation, the general interest rates, and the rates at which they borrow.
Yeah, that's because people don't recognize it. But
No, it's because the economically disadvantaged can be taken advantage of.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's easier to take advantage of the economically disadvantaged with a high inflation rate. Because when there is a low inflation rate, there isn't much to be taken advantage of. Actually, in a low inflation rate, it's actually useful to loan and invest, funny enough. But the investment turn over money, but money lending doesn't turn over a lot of money. So money lenders want high inflation.
Yeah, but the point is that even with general inflation at 1 or 2%, and the bank interest rates at 0.5%, which they've been for the longest time, payday loan lenders can still charge 150%.
Yeah,
because it's all about the market. It's not about at that end, it's not about any correlation.
Yeah, but then people, how do I say this better? The idea of what is or isn't good for the economy isn't based on the reality of things. It's based on the narrative of things.
Yeah, well, all of economics is perception. Just look at the frigging stock market, which
True that is better for a growing economy because the investments to
Okay, can I just disagree with you fundamentally?
Yeah, you can.
Britain during the second half of the 19th century had what's the term? Had negative inflation, deflation, And it did not do well for the economy.
Yeah, but deflation is also not a good thing.
Yeah, but deflation is the opposite of inflation.
Yeah, but it's not a good thing.
Yeah, but that's my point. So what happens when you go beyond inflation? You get to zero, and then you keep going, you get deflation. My point being is that you
shouldn't go to beyond. You should be.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, these factors
you should be in the status quo, so to speak.
Yeah, but unfortunately, these things are not determinable. You can't say what they will be.
No, actually, they are quite determinable. And one of the reasons why the UK had a problem re-establishing itself was because a lot of, how do you call them? Bastards. I think bastards is a good word. Started to trade in the English currency, which destroyed the pound. Well, nearly destroyed it.
Well, yeah, but the British government at the time didn't help because they...
I know, but...
They joined the ERM at the wrong rate at the wrong time.
I know, but if you know it's even... Well, yeah.
No,
but,
they did. They were mind-mendingly stupid.
I know, I agree. But if your inflation is nigh on zero, and you protect your currency, then investment itself becomes important again.
Only if people can see a return on investment.
No, that's the thing. Because people always saw a return on investment. But once you have a high inflation, money lenders see a higher inflation on loaning money than investing money. And there lies the problem. So what you want is a situation where investing, whether it is successful or not, because let's be honest, not all investments are successful, but if you invest, that's the way to make money, because production makes money, and investment establish or encourages production. But what we have now, especially in London, let's be honest, the whole the Wall Street and London, how do you call it? Options. And, well, yes.
The whole thing is
there is more money to be made.
The whole thing is skimming off the top. That's why the City of London wants all Europe's.
And that's the worst
trading.
Part. People say it's skimming off the top, but the worst part, it's not skimming off the top. It's skimming off the bottom. They're buying healthy companies and then breaking them up and selling parts of it because that's...
Oh, no, that's something slightly different. I'm just talking about the mere hosting of share trading is skimming off the top.
Thing. It all boils down to the same thing.
Well, they are slightly different things.
It's about making money, not producing. And because of inflation, money in itself becomes more valuable than production. And because money becomes more valuable than production, you are actually physically encouraging a throwaway society. And then everyone went quiet. Is anyone still there, or did I lose connection?
I've been listening intently. I'm not sure I have much to add to this conversation.
John, are you still there? There is a thunderstorm going on, so we could lose connection. I don't know. Did John pop off? Well, that's possible. That's too bad, really. Well, he'll be back, I hope. There is, as I said, there's a thunderstorm, and it's possible that there's a thunderstorm in the canal. So it's kind of funny, but we can lose connection because of that.
Holland is filling with water.
Well, that's another thing. When people talk about the environmental threats, oh, the sea level is rising. Yeah, you know what? I'm already 6 meters below sea level. Fuck that.
Your country is basically one big Isengard.
Well, I'm high enough for the global warming not to reach up to my doorstep. Just the coast will be a lot closer.
This is why people are buying houses around, not in California, but what's the state next to California?
Nevada? Oregon?
Yeah, probably, because one day that might be coastal property.
Arizona Bay. It might be green then. But no, my mum will be underwater. She well, as some of you know, she has a seafront view.
But it depends on where you have a seafront view. I mean, if you're close to...
Yeah, well, her seafront is almost sea level and literally 100, no, not 100, less than that. 20 yards from the beach.
That is cool, but yeah.
And by beach, I mean pebbles. There is no sand involved.
Obviously, it's an English beach.
It's in Scotland. How could it be an English beach in Scotland?
Well, fair enough then. A British beach.
It's a Scottish beach.
Well, Scotland's are Brits too, you know.
Yes.
Don't be.
But you called it an English beach.
Yeah, I corrected myself by saying British.
Only under duress, I know.
No, but this is the funny thing though, because when people talk about and this has to do with the throwaway economics, the throwaway society. People don't like to think about solutions. They don't like to think long term.
Well, this was my point, which I forgot to entirely make.
No, I understood, and
no. But I told you before that was my point, and then I said, "Please remember this, because I'll forget," and I did forget.
You're going to ask me to remember things.
Yes, you're younger than me.
Yeah, but not by much.
And you haven't got much of a bottle of very nice red Australian wine inside you.
There is that. No, but where I agree with you is that the throwaway mentality, let's call it the throwaway mentality, is problematic to our societies.
Mm-hmm.
Now, where I don't believe that we are limited in our growth in itself isn't a useful or a good thing. People like to pretend it is. But the same people that are pushing this, I mean, there are still people out there who will tell us that, oh, yeah, no, we need to save our ecology. And we do this by spending more money on useless technologies that don't do what we want them to do.
Yeah.
So we are bankrupting ourselves. For example, a great example of that would be obviously the CO2 taxes that more countries are now thinking about using. Listen, if you really want to do something about CO2, don't make people pay for using a car they need to get to the bloody job they have to do to be able to.
Not just that, but don't go on holiday.
Oh yeah, they don't want you to go on holiday. Don't fly.
No, I'm saying if you want to cut down your CO2, start with yourself and stop jet setting around the world.
Yeah. Or what you could also do to reduce CO2, plant trees. Yeah, but there's no money to be made in that, so no one is pushing for that. But we know it works.
The British have. I've told you this before. The British government has given tax exemptions for planting trees. And
yes, John, the predominant word in that sentence is had.
I don't care.
The same was true in the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, we subsidized farmers to build to plant trees around their fields, and farmers dutifully did. And then the Dutch government said, you know what, we're going to stop giving these subsidies. Whereas the farmers then said, you know what, I have wood for sale. So this is
and the porn industry goes from strength to strength.
Yeah. And then in Germany they want to spend huge amounts of money to go green, because now we have more wind power farms and we have more solar power farms, and because of that we need more coal installations, because wind and solar are highly unreliable. Whereas France basically said, yeah, you know what, we're not going green, we're going nuclear. And funny enough, they've gone a lot greener than Germany has in, well, ever.
Don't cite the Germans, that is. We don't like the Germans at this point.
But the same is true for the English, though.
Yeah, well, we're just morons. That's our excuse.
Well, same excuse the French and the English and the German can use.
No, the Germans are just ruthlessly efficient.
No, they're not efficient. How can you say they're efficient? They're throwing money away at green technologies that are absolutely wasting money. This is the funny thing about Obama's Solindra. There was absolutely no money to be made.
You what?
Solindra was the United States way of trying to go into solar power as well.
Okay.
Maybe St. Clair knows more about that, being American.
I think he's gone to sleep.
No, well, what was it? I may have.
Sorry.
Let's pretend I did doze off for a second. What are you talking about?
How we are throwing away money to go green, which is.
I do not have enough information.
You never heard of Solindra? I think
no, I have not.
It's Obama used a lot of money to subsidize.
Yeah, Obama's a twat. Can I say that? Is anyone going to object?
No, I'm not going to object.
I have asked Americans to tell me one thing Obama did that was good, and I've yet to hear an answer.
Well, I'm going to give a very strange analogy, but I've been asking people for years now to name me one thing feminism has done that's good.
Yeah, well, you're not alone in that.
No, it's true. It's the same thing.
I've never heard anyone else but me ask the thing about Obama.
No, well, fair enough, but it's the same thing. What's good about Obama? Well, he's a black president. Yeah, okay, we've had black presidents before. Well, not in America, we haven't. Yeah, but America isn't the only country in the bloody world now, is it?
Yeah, but of course it is. Come on, St. Clair, stand up for your country. Of course it is.
I pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yeah, but that's the thing, though. Obama is the first black president. Well, I think there are quite a few countries in the world who would like to point out to you how you are wrong.
You've got to understand that in progressive politics, everything is always the first, no matter how many times it's happened before.
Yeah, true that. I still like the fact how, what was it? Captain Marvel was the first female superhero.
Yeah. No.
And people are like, remember Catwoman? Remember?
No. Come on. Wonder Woman. Lindsay Wagner.
Catwoman and Elektra were way before Wonder Woman. Well,
Really?
That's not really true because you already had the series of
Wonder Woman in the 1970s.
Yeah. You're fair point.
Lindsay Wagner. That was my point.
Yeah, fair point.
And Bionic Woman, who was the other one. What was her name?
That one was crap.
Yeah, I don't care.
Spin-off.
It's not whether it's good or not. Whether it's good or not, it's whether
Emma
it
Peel?
was.
Emma Peel.
No, she wasn't a superhero.
I mean, she was pretty super in the books of many people.
No, she was considered. Yeah, she was considered attractive before my time, but anyway.
She was the sidekick of the Avenger.
Steed.
Yeah.
No, but that's not the point. The point was his superhero. The first female superhero.
Yeah, it's Elektra. Well, but Wonder Woman, fair enough.
Wonder Woman.
I'm
a
trying to
proper superhero.
Yeah, she was.
And that was way back when.
And the Batman series had Batgirl. Fair enough. President Mugabe was irritated by that. What? The fact that people called Obama the first black president.
Yeah.
I can imagine that.
There were many in African, long before Mugabe. There were many black African presidents.
What was the first African country to embrace democracy?
Who said anything about democracy?
No, Liberia.
A lot of the African countries had presidents who were life presidents. Strange.
Yes, like Mugabe.
No, but long before him.
True that.
Lots of countries, and they'd be like 30 years and going.
Yeah.
95% in the election.
Yeah. Funny enough, everyone keeps voting for him. Yes.
Do either of you guys know what the first independent African democratic nation was?
I'm going to area, but I'm not 100% sure. Well, actually,
it depends what you mean by independent. This is the problem, because are you talking post-colonialism?
It doesn't necessarily have to be post-colonial, but it has to be a. It can be a colony, but it has to have a republican form of government, even if it's only a satellite state.
No, that's not what I mean. I'm talking about, you're not talking about the ancient world.
Yeah, he's not talking about.
No, I don't believe there are any ancient democracies in Africa.
No, that's fine. I was just trying to clarify.
I mean, except maybe Carthage, but I consider Carthage to be a Phoenician colony and not necessarily African.
Which was still in Africa.
Well,
that's the problem.
It was culturally Phoenician, and I don't consider Phoenician.
Yeah, but that's the problem, isn't it? You know, when we get down to it, we give these terms labels like African or Middle Eastern, but it was all very fluid at the time because no one gave a shit back then.
Well, most people don't give a shit.
I consider the Sahara to be a fair enough barrier.
No, I'm not disputing that, but you understand that the Mediterranean was Middle Earth, being the literal meaning of Mediterranean, and so they didn't have a concept that we have of Europe versus Africa versus.
Yes, fair enough. But my question was in reference to Obama saying he was the first black president, and Modwain saying no, he wasn't. Who was the first black president?
Depends. Which country are we talking about now?
I don't know. It depends on which was the first African nation to embrace republican democracy.
Well,
and establish the title of presidency.
Well, that's a question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Presidency.
Or some equivalent, like prime minister. I consider prime minister to be roughly equivalent to a president.
South Africa was a democracy. Still is. Officially.
Yeah, but they didn't have the first black one. The first black president was Nelson Mandela.
Their first black president was Nelson Mandela. Yes. Which was still a lot way before Obama, let's be honest.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Nelson Mandela. People seem to think of him.
No, I am actually, because he had incredible dignity and he attempted very far-sighted solutions.
Well, let's see if I can find anything interesting.
Liberia was the first African republic.
Yeah, I know. That's what I said.
Yeah, I know. I'm just confirming, telling you you're right. It's been known to happen.
Quite a few times. No, but
you just always seem so astounded.
No, I'm not. But I think Liberia was the first one, actually. I'm not quite sure.
It says, according to the new int.org blog, something it was.
But I don't know which ones are democratic, to be honest.
Well, democracy is a strange word, given that the German Democratic Republic was anything
or the Democratic Republic of North Korea.
Or Democratic North Korea.
Or the Democratic Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo. Which, it has the name democratic.
Well, no, when I say democratic, when I say Republican, I'm adhering to a principle, not one anybody believes themselves to be.
Yeah, the thing is, if we're talking about Africa, it's very difficult to confirm that because Africa has this nasty tendency as being as corrupt as, well, something that's really corrupt.
Everything's corrupt. It's only whether you realize it or not.
No, maybe. But in all fairness, I always like to think of, it's difficult to talk about democracies or republics, because most countries used to have a form of elite governing them, whether it was royalty by any other name. Now, obviously, the Greeks, the Romans had republics. So were there...
Yeah, and then the the Romans went from a republic to an emperor. That's weird.
Yeah, which is a path often seen, by the way. So then, for the longest time, we didn't see any republics in the Western world. And funny enough, everyone seems to think that France was the first modern democratic republic or democracy, where in reality, that's absolutely not true. And I'd like to say that the Dutch were, but I'm not really sure that the Dutch were either, even though they were so.
Well,
200 years before.
Florence is sometimes cited.
Sorry?
Florence is sometimes cited, and so is Venice.
Yeah, but no, Venice wasn't a democracy. Venice was an...
Well, here's the thing, because it varies, depends upon what you're thinking about. For instance, the Iceland has the oldest parliament, the most long-standing parliament.
Yeah.
And the Parliament of the Isle of Man precedes that of the United Kingdom. Well, England, as it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but they are still based on the same way of democracy of the Greeks. Though the Icelandic parliament isn't really based on the Greek form of democracy, it's more based on the Thing democracy of the Viking Ages.
So at what point did the Greek Renaissance form of democracy mutate into the modern Enlightenment form of democracy? At what generation can we make the dividing line?
Well, here's the problem. Okay, so for instance, you as an American, you're probably more familiar with Magna Carta than most Britons are. I've heard this. That America holds
John the Second, 1215.
Yeah, but the point is, you hold it in higher esteem than we Brits do, conceptually. And the reason we Brits don't hold it in high regard is because it didn't mean anything to the British Constitution. The significant acts of the British Constitution, there was the
it was just a
civil war. There was a civil war, which was the battle between the rule of kings, the divine right of kings, as embodied by Charles I, and the supremacy of Parliament, which was only elected by a tiny proportion of the population, like 2%. So it wasn't really the people; it was just the people, as in who counted at that time. So that was a significant factor. You had the Bill of Rights in 1689, which was the first constitutional limit on the royal power, followed by the Act of Succession involving William, which again limited the ability of the royal house to determine its own future under the say of the Parliament. Then you had your lot split off, which fundamentally changed because it actually went from a monarchy with an aristocracy with a third tier of a kind of popularism to a conceptually democratic system. But even then, you had slavery. And so neither country had the full franchise until the 20th century. So the question is, when did democracy happen in those countries?
But if we look at how democracy happened in Europe, there are basically two ways, really. There was the Greek-Roman way, and there was the Germanic way. And the Germanic way was basically the thing, or the old thing, where people just got together and talked about stuff. But they didn't really have.
That's not just Germanic. That's something that all hunter-gatherers do.
Yeah, true. But the Germanic Nordic system, they weren't hunter-gatherers anymore. They weren't hunter-gatherers for the longest time.
Well, not only hunter-gatherers, but also settled bands and tribes.
Yeah, but they weren't that.
This happens in New Guinea, in Australia.
No. In Europe, when the Germans did this, when the Norsemen did this, when the Dane did this, when the Swede did this, when the Rus, they had societies. They had modern societies. They had cities. They had countries. Well, countries is a different way now than it was then. So
it seems to me terribly inefficient to have hundreds and thousands of people gathering together in one place.
Well, most countries didn't have hundreds of thousands of people, let's be honest. But yeah, no, the people that found that certain things were worth talking about would come together.
Yeah, but that's not the same thing as the official decision-making mechanism for a state. Democracy is the official decision-making mechanism for a state.
But I think it grew out of that, and this is true for Greco.
When you say it grew out of that, not really.
Well, I think it did, though. Where the Greco-Roman system were going into representative.
No. The Greco-Roman system was fundamentally different. The Greek system was a proper direct democracy.
I know, but
the Roman system was a representative democracy.
Yes, I know. It grew from the Greek system into a representative system.
No, it was separate.
I wouldn't say it was separate.
I would say it was separate because
it was inspired by idea diffusion.
Yeah, but the Greek system was
particularly in the period 452 to 451 when the Decemvirate sent out those three individuals to study Greek culture.
Mm.
But if we look at the old thing system in the Norse cultures, Germanic cultures, and the Greco form of democracy, the old thing was slightly more based on democracy than the Greek version, actually. But the Greek version was how do you call it? If you look at how the Norse and the Germanic things, right? You had the thing. A thing was local, and you had an old thing. An old thing would be for every tribe in the area or every city in the area. Not everyone would go there, but the ones that felt that it was important would. So it would still be based on representation, but it's not chosen representation. It's more.
Yeah, it's direct. I mean, the thing is the option to the opportunity, if you want to, is what counts.
Mm-hmm.
All modern systems of government deny that.
Yeah, that's true. Because if you look at modern democracies, you can't go against what democracy has planned for you. Funny enough, even if you vote against it and you win, you're still not allowed to go against the democracy.
No, well, it's not against the democracy. It's against.
The leaders.
It's a long-standing view in this country that I understood in the 1970s, that there's a difference between the public face of government and who's in power. For power is not purely governmental.
Mm-hmm.
It is the ability to bend government to your will. It is in English what we call the establishment, in what America is probably called the deep state. I assume that's the same thing, but it was always the establishment. It was the wealthy in private clubs. It
Uh-huh.
was what goes on behind closed doors, where warnings were given, mafia style, so to speak.
Yeah.
It'll be in your best interest to do this. You know, the offers you can't refuse and all that. And that was power.
Mm-hmm. Well, I understand what you mean.
But you know, then we talk about government. Well, government's an illusion to a large extent.
Well, it's an illusion that we need to keep perpetuating to prevent society from crumbling down, it seems.
Yeah.
I don't know why, though.
I'm not saying it's not a useful illusion. I'm just saying it's an illusion.
In the Netherlands, at this point in time, we have a new discussion going on. I was actually thinking about making a video about this. Pegida is anti-Muslim.
Aren't Pegida the Austrian group?
I'm not sure if they're Austrian or German, but we have them in the Netherlands as well. I think they're German, actually, but I can't remember. But they are anti-Muslim, anti-fascism. So also anti-Antifa, funny enough, because the biggest fascist at this point in time is Antifa. And they've been trying to get they've been trying to demonstrate. And in the Netherlands, you have the right to demonstrate. Now, you might need, how do you call it, a permit. But other than that, if you ask for a permit, on average, you're going to get it. And there have been several demonstrations from Pegida that are being cancelled or disallowed because large groups of people of a certain religious ideology have threatened violence.
Yeah.
Prevent violence from happening.
Yeah.
And people are now no longer allowed to.
Yeah, and it all goes one way.
It always goes one way. So yeah, there's a danger in democratic systems that are merely there to protect the status quo, because the status quo isn't always a good thing.
Oh, no. I mean, this is the whole irony of conservatism, which I pointed out in my videos, that conservatism is only good if what you're conserving is worth preserving.
Yeah.
And when conservatism started, it was a very elitist, discriminatory viewpoint. And being anti-conservative was a good thing. Whereas now we've achieved the goals from 200 years ago, conservatism is a good thing.
Well, there is something to be said in a positive way for this. I hate this, but the whole thing about society is that we need to look at it from a balanced or nuanced point of view. Yes, we need to conserve what is useful to conserve, and yet we need to also keep an eye open on how we can progress. But progressivism for the sake of being progressive.
Well, change. I would like to say change. Yeah, this is the problem, because most progressives mean change, and change is not inherently progress.
True.
It's just change. And in fact, more change, it is easier to change negatively for the worse than it is to change for the better. And therefore, change itself should be viewed with suspicion.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Ready for bed, mate?
I just got out. I only slept for 2 hours. So yeah, there is that. Today has been a dreadful day. I hate the weather, don't I?
Is it hot there? It's been bloody cold here.
Oh, well, it's still sweltering. It's not so much hot as sweltering.
Okay.
And
I believe there's a difference there.
Yeah. But the Netherlands, I mean, England might be an island, but we are actually below water level. And that means that the air humidity in England is high, but in the Netherlands it's
Hey, technically we're not an island.
how?
You know, Great Britain is an island. It is the name of the island of which England is a part.
Fair enough. Pedantic, but fair enough.
Oh, it's you know, I like to be accurate.
But yeah, no, it's yeah. So yeah, the weather is killing me. That's basically the short of it.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've been talking for quite a while. Normally I would go on for another 20 minutes, but
Well, I think we've lost our audience apart from good old Ludicrous and
yeah.
Paul Sinclair is
Oh, I'm out of my element. I really am. This is not my expertise at all. This is not what I know.
But neither is it what we know. We just rabbit.
We have some knowledge.
Okay, it's not what I know, Sinclair. It's what Modwain knows.
We have some knowledge.
You are terrific at mincing. I'll give you that.
Look, I mean, the point is to have fun and speak.
True that. The thing is, people have forgotten the value of exchanging ideas. Discussion is not about who is right. Discussion is about what's going on.
Can I suggest a discussion for next week?
Yeah, sure.
How about the topic of selfishness and altruism in humans and what causes it?
I love that.
What can we do about it?
No, should we do anything about it? Should we do anything about it?
Should we do anything about it is a better question indeed.
Fair enough.
No, I love that topic. Honestly, it's something I really find interesting.
Yeah, we can.
I really struggle with the people who think it's a problem. It's more, is it a problem? And I'm happy to discuss that.
No, if it is, what is the problem? Because altruism itself means nothing.
No, altruism is humanity's greatest trait.
Is it?
Yes.
What's altruism?
Well, this is what.
Can I answer that question? Can I answer that question? Altruism is group survival.
Yes, thank you.
Altruism is a series of actions that lead to group survival.
Thank you, and that's our greatest trait.
But if it's a series of actions, then altruism itself isn't one action, so you can't define.
No, it's a type. It's a description of a type of behavior.
It's behavioral. It's defined by the effect it has on the world.
Yes. So, but basically, that means that altruism is based on what the nuance says that altruism is for that period of time, or
no. You can describe it.
Let's think about our points and then talk about
let's talk and then later.
Let's do it now so we don't have to do it next week. No, come on.
No, I mean here's the point. Like so altruism is an issue I've thought a lot about, okay? Because it really ties into evolution and the fact we're a social species. And Ludicrous has just pointed out selfishness can also lead to altruism, and that's the point.
Yes.
It can be very selfish to be altruistic.
Yep.
And it's wonderful because doing the best for yourself can involve helping others. Because we're a social species and we have strength in numbers. Therefore, individualism has its limits.
Right. Individualism has its limits, particularly when you have a really high population. For example, self-sacrifice exists. You find it's more common in high density populations with a lot of with a lot of expendable people for
well actually the evolutionary information on that isn't true. Basically, even in a band, because of the genetic relation between say a grandfather has the same genetic relationship to an uncle. Okay, so your nephew has the same relationship to a grandchild. Therefore, there is no genetic disadvantage to even sacrificing yourself in a band situation for lots of close relatives, and therefore, even in a prehistoric band situation, tribal situation, there's a lot of incentive for altruistic self-sacrifice from a genetic point of view. And so it is inherent to being a social species where we live with our relatives that we act in altruistic behaviors, ways, things. I'm drunk.
All right. I didn't really understand the last few sentences.
No, I'm sorry. Okay, so if you're in a band, individual self-sacrifice perpetuates the survival of your genes, even if you don't get to procreate yourself. Therefore, it is encouraged.
Right. It can, if your self-sacrifice is meaningful, it can promote. It can promote the replication of your genes in the form of
relatives,
your siblings having children because of your self-sacrifice.
Yeah, exactly. So altruism has a benefit even in ancient groups.
It's also a good explanation for homosexuality developing in groups.
It is. It is. I've heard Brett Weinstein explain this. That research suggests
it's a beneficent social behavior that develops for the benefit of the group.
Yeah, that homosexuality increases for like fourth, fifth, etc. sons.
You have to explain that one.
Sorry. When parents have a lot of children,
yeah,
later sons are more likely to be homosexual.
Okay.
Because procreation becomes less relevant at those numbers.
Yeah.
And there is a benefit to group survival for non-reproductive men.
Do you think just growing up with older siblings triggers the
well, it's hard to say because it's supposed to be in utero. Is what I've heard. It's supposed to be in utero is a significant factor, but I don't know the biology.
What do you mean in utero?
You know, while the child is still inside the mother.
No, I don't believe that at all. I think homosexuality has to do with the genes interacting with the environment during childhood and adolescence.
Okay, because I've heard hormonal differences during pregnancy can make a difference. But I'm not going to tell you what's right or wrong because I just hear things and who knows who's correct.
I hear things. Abraham,
well, you hear people say
Abraham
things.
Just heard things.
No, you hear people say things and you don't know if they're right. You just hear people say things as if.
Yeah. Abraham could have told me the same thing.
Yeah.
He hears people say things. Sorry, that's a funny little in joke of mine that he was a horrible paranoid schizophrenic, and that's the reason for the story.
Yeah. No. I mean, it's like, you know, it's like one has to treat certain things one hears, even from people one generally trusts, with a pinch of salt. Yeah. And I don't like to take what they say as definitive just because they say so in a definitive manner.
True that. True that.
So, yeah, Alicia's all over the place at the moment. She is listening, but busy.
Okay, well,
let you know.
hi there, Alicia.
So I moaned about her uploading her video after your stream started because I like to moan.
So you can't be first now.
And she said, I will apologize to Modwain. And I just wrote, it wasn't Modwain who complained, just me.
Yeah. No, listen, I'll watch her stuff when I can. Because
no, I know. It's just I happened to click on the bell thing and it's noted that there was a new video from her after your stream started. So I sent her a little joke saying, how dare you send the upload after Modwain's stream started? So she apologized, and I'm like, no, don't apologize to Modwain. He didn't complain. He didn't even know it's me. Because I'm a twat like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he says, do not deny. That's fine. I'm not going to complain. Not going to complain.
I can't really, can I? I mean, obviously.
I'm a twat, yes.
Some things are, how do you call it?
Self-evident.
Self-evident.
I believe in owning my faults.
Anywho, I am going to call it quits for today. I would like to thank people for showing up. I always thank people for showing up.
Yes.
And,
thank you, Ludicrous, for being such a trooper.
Yeah.
R1.
Have you ever considered actually coming on, Ludicrous?
Yes, Ludicrous, we have had him on once.
And he's more than welcome to rejoin when he wants, but
he's also going through major life changes right now, which keep him kind of busy.
I feel like everybody is either depressed or going through changes.
Can I just say I'm depressed?
I feel like out of my whole circle of extended friends on the internet, I'm the only one who has any confidence at the moment.
Oh, good for you! Hurrah! I really like that. Thank you. Can I just say, wow, thank you.
Oh, maybe. Oh, I don't know. I hope I can fire up some spirits.
No, my depression is mostly genetic and nothing to do with being positive or negative, just to being a miserable git.
I would rather people follow me like a bunch of drunken fish than be depressed. That's how much I care about your happiness.
Well, I'm depressed because I suffer from depression. It's a medical condition. Technically, in the UK, a disability, though I've never claimed it as such. But I am a happy drunk, and I'm drunk and I'm happy. So there you go.
I had a vision about a sort of Pied Piper finding depressed people and then getting them drunk and having them run off a cliff. I don't think really useful way of getting rid of the homeless population.
I don't think the cliff featured in the Hamlin story.
What Hamlet story is that? Oh,
Hamlin.
Yeah.
Hamlin. Anyway, considering the time and all that, and considering that everyone has left the stream by now,
I'm so inebriated I can't focus anymore.
Oh, you're drunk too. Good for you. Excellent.
I'm actually high on marijuana. That's my thing.
Okay. My excuse is it's nearly 1:30 in the morning.
It's about 7:30.
Oh, you're an American. I've got a question for you. If I say 1:30, what time is that?
1:30 p.m.
Thank you. Because I was having an argument with Modwain's better half that she said 1:30 was 1:30, not 1:30.
I just guessed, honestly, and I just happened to guess correctly.
Oh, right. You Americans don't say it then.
I mean, no, we say 1:30. Or my husband, he's a veteran, and he still uses military time, so he would say something like
1:30.
13:30 or something like that, or 13:30 hours.
The thing is, in the Netherlands, we all use a 24-hour clock.
Hang on a sec.
In our country, it's usually only veterans who use it because they're taught very, very, very well.
Well, the funny thing is, we use the 24-hour clock, but 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we still call 1 o'clock. But we'd write it down as 1300. And then people got quiet.
Oh, there's just no response to that. It's just okay.
Yeah, but that's the thing, though. I mean, listen, if I'm going to see you at 2 o'clock, and we're going to meet somewhere, then yeah, it's quite clear whether we talk about 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 2 o'clock at night. But for writing it down, we use a 24-hour system because it's for the people who read. It's easier to recognize. Half 1 is 12:30. Yeah. Or 0:30. Considering the time we're talking about now, it's half 1 is 0:30. Anyway, guys, we keep coming.
I'm nearly got you there. I've nearly got you. 3 minutes till the 1:30.
Yeah, fairly well done. Anyway, everyone who was listening in and everyone who will be listening in future days to come, thank you very much. And I hope to see you all next time. St. Clair, any last words?
Yeah, do drugs, kids.
Don't do drugs.
No, don't do drugs.
Don't tell anybody.
No. No, don't tell anyone, but don't do drugs. Do life. Get high on life.
Get high on life, yeah.
Sorry. So
well, I mean, get high on something that was recently alive.
Yeah, alcohol. Drink alcohol. Alcohol.
Listen,
if you're a Muslim,
I am only joking, of course. I am not endorsing any of that.
If you're a Muslim,
I don't mind adults doing what they do. I don't think if you're younger than 21, prize your brain.
Really?
Yes. Alcohol, all drugs damage your brain.
Excuse me. Drink young and drink well.
Oh yeah, you gotta drink. I mean, everyone needs water at least.
When I was quite young when I started. And I will stop.
Yes, that explains it, doesn't it?
It explains a lot. Yes. Mental retardation, the inability to think a coherent thought, let alone utter it.
Yeah, me too, though. Fair is fair. Anyway, this is where we're going to stop. See you all next time. And now I'm pressing.